Hello and welcome to a special edition of the greatest battles celebrating 50 years of India's spectacular victory over Pakistan in 1971. Today, we talk about a battle that made that victory and the dash to Dhaka possible. A victory against all odds. Today, we talk about the Battle of Sylhet. The war hadn't started, but it was clear India had to liberate the people of East Pakistan from the atrocities of West Pakistan.
Record and target uniform 482.
The refugees are still coming over and you have this enormous problem in India. How much longer can you sustain this?
We can't sustain it now longer. It's now for some months it really has been something that's, water going higher and higher.
What are you going to do about it?
But something will have to be done.
Since war hadn't been declared, India had to proceed with caution.
Mrs. Gandhi, in an awful temper, looked at me and read out messages from the Chief Minister of West Bengal. The thousands of refugees have poured in. From the Chief Minister of Assam, the Chief Minister of Tripura. And she looked at me and said, "What are you doing about it?"
The aim was to dash to Dhaka, but to achieve that aim, certain vital assets and vital points had to be in India's control.
It was important that two places, Atgram and Ghazipur, had to be eliminated before we could reach Sylhet. तो मेरी पलटन 4/5 गोरखा राइफल्स बहुत गंभीर लड़ाई लड़ी थी एट अटग्राम एंड गाजीपुर। अटग्राम में हमारी पलटन ने चार्ली कंपनी 31 पंजाब को बिल्कुल बर्बाद की।
मेन मकसद हमारा मिशन इज सिलेट, तो उसको हासिल करने, जीत हासिल करने के लिए हमें एटग्राम और गाजीपुर में कब्जा करना निहायत ही जरूरी था।
As far as the attack on Sylhet is concerned, we had already undertaken two major operations before attacking the garrison of Sylhet. These were at Atgram and Ghazipur.
In the first week of November 1971, the Eastern Command headquarters decided to penetrate and control territory approximately 10 miles or 16 kilometers inside then East Pakistan. The 59 Mountain Brigade was tasked for Sylhet operations. On the night intervening November 2021, the 4-5 Gorkha Rifles was tasked to take control of the Atgram complex. This was part 1 of the operation. 9 guards was to capture Zakiganj in the second part of the operation, and then forces had to wait for orders to capture Karimganj. Information about Atgram complex was rather restricted. Surprise was key to success in this operation. The enemy could not be alerted. Therefore, the kukri, the silent yet killer weapon, was the weapon of choice. Coordination between forces participating in this attack was extremely critical and yet, given the circumstances, extremely difficult. Pakistan was unaware that the Indian army was carrying out an operation in support of the Mukti Bahini, and therefore retaining that element of surprise was of critical importance. The night of Eid-ul-Zuha was chosen for this operation. As planned on November 20 at last light, the forces left for the operation. Soldiers crossed the Surma River on boats, but the marshy land made forward movement very difficult. Suddenly, the still of the night was shattered by the burst of machine gun fire. Pakistani soldiers heard some movement and opened fire from two directions. The Indian Army soldiers lay still, not reacting. The Pakistani soldiers perhaps thought it was a Mukti Bahini attack that failed. Indian Army soldiers waited for more than 45 minutes, and when the Pakistani soldiers let their guard down, attacked with the Gorkha battle cry of Ayo Gorkhali.
In order to maintain surprise and in order to catch the enemy off guard, it was decided that a silent kukri assault would be launched on the enemy, and another reason being that the main intention was to strike fear and terror in the minds of the enemy, and therefore by the mere leadership of the then commanding officer, who took the decision that kukris will be utilized, and a kukri assault was planned upon the enemy.
The Pakistani soldiers were shocked and taken aback by the ferocity of the attack and fled, leaving behind their weapons. Those who could not run fast enough lay dead, including a Pakistan Army captain. The brave Gorkhas too suffered casualties, with 2 officers and 1 junior commissioned officer making the supreme sacrifice of their lives, along with some soldiers. The Pakistan Army commander of the Pakistani forces in East Pakistan, Lieutenant General A.A.K. Niazi, was shocked at the ferocity of the Gorkha attack. He was reported to have been aghast at the manner in which the Pakistan Army soldiers abandoned their posts and weapons and ran away. He issued a firm order to Pakistan Army not to withdraw unless there were 75% casualties reported. This order proved fatal for Pakistan. Also fatal for Pakistan Army was the fortress strategy of General Niazi. To protect Dhaka, Lieutenant General A.A.K. Niazi relied on his fortress strategy. 10 cities were converted into fortresses with enough arms and ammunition to last at least 60 days and ration stocks for at least 45 days. These fortress cities were Jasor, Chandia, Bogra, Rangpur, Jamalpur, Maiman Singh, Bhairav Bazar, Komila, Chadgram and Sylhet.
During the 1971 war, General Niazi had adopted the fortress defenses strategy, wherein certain towns were turned into fortresses. Example, Sylhet, Jasor, Jandia and others. So the enemy had decided to fight its defensive battle from these fortresses.
General Niazi did not plan for a strong defense at the borders. The aim was to draw the Indian Army inside and then either have it bogged down, battling to take over cities, or surrounded if they made a dash to Dhaka. The brave Gorkha troops were also tasked to capture Ghazipur. Now, like at Adgram, the soldiers of 4 or 5 Gorkhas defeated the enemy, but this victory came at a huge cost. The battalion went into war with 18 officers, but only 11 were in combat as of that time. 3 had made the supreme sacrifice of their lives. 4 were critically injured. The commanding officer sought time to reorganize his forces. Intelligence inputs had indicated that the Pakistan Army had withdrawn an infantry brigade. To verify this information, a reconnaissance sortie was carried out.
And seeing the kind of deployment that was there at Sylhet, it was decided that a normal attack will not succeed. We need to do some blatant planning, we need to improvise some kind of plan, and we need to achieve surprise. And that is what gave birth to the first Heliborne operation of the Indian Army as well as of the Indian Air Force.
Since the helicopter was not targeted and no movement was spotted on ground, a plan was formulated to carry out a special Heliborne operation. Never in the history had the Indian Army carried out a Heliborne operation at this scale.
Planning बहुत हुई थी क्योंकि पहली बार ऐसे ऑपरेशन को अंजाम दिया जा रहा था. एंड ना केवल इंडियन आर्मी में, इट वाज प्लानिंग विद द इंडियन एयरफोर्स ऑल्सो. ये इंडियन एयरफोर्स के लिए भी एक नई प्रकार की चुनौतियां डाल रहा था. तो हाई लेवल कमांडर्स की बहुत सटीक प्लानिंग थी और साथ में ऑन ग्राउंड जो रिहर्सल्स कराए गए हमारे ट्रुप्स को द्वारा, हमारे ट्रुप्स से, तो ये ऑल जब फाइनली ऑपरेशन हुआ था तो जिस प्रकार से हमने सक्सेस पाई है तो ये दिखाती है कि ये प्लानिंग और जो एक जोश होता है वो कितना मैटर करता है किसी भी ऑपरेशन में.
10 Mi-8 helicopters were tasked to carry out the heli drop. Each helicopter could carry one section or 10 armed soldiers. The aim was to heli drop an entire battalion by last light.
मेरे ख्याल में उनको अचंभा हुआ है. हेलीकॉप्टर आया, क्या आया, किस लिए आया, तो उससे पहले हम वापस आया. They had no reaction time to shoot at the helicopter. और हमारी कमांडर को ये विचार थी कि कोई फायर नहीं थी तो कोई 202 brigade must have gone, but they had not gone. They were there. So at that time it was too sudden for them to take action.
On the 7th of December at 14:30 hours, the first company landed at Sylhet. It came under massive and direct fire by the Pakistan Army.
जब हम वहाँ लैंड किए तो काफ़ी हैवी फायरिंग हो रही थी. तो हेलीकॉप्टर्स और क्रूज जो फर्स्ट वेव में थे बहुत ज़्यादा फायरिंग में आ गए. तो वो काफ़ी ज़बरदस्त सरप्राइज मिला हम लोगों को.
Pakistan Army's 202 Infantry Brigade was at Sylhet and 313 Infantry Brigade had been sent as reinforcements. In midst of heavy enemy fire, another company of the Indian Army rushed in. The odds were stacked heavily against India. 250 Indian soldiers facing off against over 4,000 Pakistan Army soldiers and an extremely hostile territory. Indian Army and Air Force personnel were blissfully unaware of the numerical odds stacked against them in battle. The Indian Air Force flying Mi-8 helicopters, the pilots risked their lives and flew a total of 584 soldiers for the Sylhet airdrop. Helicopters too were in the line of Pakistan's efforts to bring down an IAF chopper, but it was because of superb training and experience of the pilots that all helicopters landed safely. On ground, soldiers immediately on deployment strengthened their defenses and laid ambushes for the Pakistan Army.
फायरिंग हो रही थी ग्राउंड ट्रूप्स के द्वारा. रैकी एयरक्राफ्ट के बावजूद उन लोगों को कुछ जानकारी मिल गई थी कि हमारे यहाँ पर एक एयरबॉर्न ऑपरेशन होने वाला है. तो उन्होंने अपने ट्रूप्स उसके आसपास पोजीशन कर दिए थे और उन लोगों ने हम पे फायरिंग शुरू की.
Pakistan Army continued to fire from a distance. Apparently, after Adgram and Ghazipur, Pakistani soldiers did not want to come too close to the kukri of the Gorkhas. Firing continued through December 8. Soldiers, though heavily armed, didn't have enough to battle an entire Pakistan Army garrison. The soldiers who were tasked to link up at Sylhet remained bogged down, and after over 48 hours, Gorkha troops were low both on ammunition and food stocks. This was the time that Indian Air Force fighter jets took off from Kumbhigram and tore into Pakistan Army defences. It is said fortune favours the brave, and the brave Indian soldiers held on to their ground. And Sylhet, despite being low both on ammunition and now even on food. Those days, news of war was broadcast on radio, and BBC announced that a brigade of Gorkhas had landed at Sylhet in East Pakistan.
On the 7th of December, an Indian brigade had been lifted by helicopters to the southeast of Sylhet across the Shurma River.
A brigade comprises close to 3,000 troops, whereas the battalion approximately 800. The BBC announcement was a nightmare for the Pakistan Army.
मैंने छोटी छोटी टुकड़ियां बना ली 10-10 आदमियों की, 10-12 टुकड़ियां बनाई, उनको 10 से 15 LMG दी और 2 MMG दी, और उनको इलाका दे दिया कि आप ये जो 1000 गज का इलाका है उसको आप बराबर 250-300 गज में खुल के बैठ जाएंगे और अपनी LMG अपने साथ रखेंगे और फायरिंग नहीं करेंगे जब तक आपके ऊपर हमला नहीं आता, मजबूर नहीं होते.
The Gorkhas took a risk. They spread out thin and fired aggressively at Pakistani patrols. Pakistan by then was under pressure, thinking they were battling an entire Indian Army brigade.
Gorkhas are very brave troops. उसकी belief है काफी हुनु बंदा रामरो मोरनो रामरो, काफी हुनु बंदा मोरनो रामरो. It is better to die than to be a coward.
एक गोरगांव की बड़ी एक अच्छी खासियत है कि ये बहुत ही निडर और सीधा ऑर्डर्स को फॉलो करने वाले लोग हैं. ये कभी भी डाउट नहीं दिखाते. तो हमारे जब सीओ ने ये बोला कि मैं तुम्हारे साथ खुद आगे जाके खुकरी का हमला करूंगा तुम्हारे साथ, तो हमारे जवानों के अंदर भी इतना जोश आ गया कि ऑटोमेटिकली उन्होंने बस कुछ नहीं देखा, अपनी खुकरी पकड़ी और दुश्मन पे धावा बोल दिया.
A Pakistan Army artillery bomb fell on the medical inspection room bunker, not just killing the injured soldiers recovering inside, but also destroyed Indian Army's medical stocks. The soldiers sent out a request for replenishment of ammunition. The IAF carried out a replenishment sortie, but the ammunition that was replenished was not what was required. Indian Army needed small arms ammunition, but the IAF had airdropped mortars. But seeing Indian Air Force aircraft drop supplies, Pakistan Army's morale sank even lower, and Indian Army soldiers were surprised to see Pakistan Army soldiers advance with white flags wanting to surrender. The Indian Army opened fire close to their feet, telling them to turn back. The Pakistan Army insisted they wanted to surrender. Indian Army said they will take their orders from their superiors first. The brigade commander was informed that the Pakistan Army wanted to surrender. He reached the next morning to take that surrender. After the Pakistan Army surrendered at Sylhet, did Pakistan Army officers realize that they were not fighting an Indian Army brigade, but just half a battalion. Troops 16 times lesser in number had kept the Pakistan Army engaged for 9 days and 9 nights. This was the first surrender by the Pakistan Army in the 1971 war. The Pakistani soldiers who surrendered included 3 brigadiers, 2 colonels, 173 officers, 290 junior commissioned officers and 8,000 Pakistan Army soldiers. And they had surrendered to just 7 officers and 532 brave soldiers of the Indian Army who had been facing them for 9 long days and 9 nights. That is all we have time for on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.